The cacophony of Orion 7's salvage market was overwhelming, even for Jonah Reyes. After 5 years living on the space station, he still found the blend of mechanical whirs, haggling merchants, and the babble of dozens of species both exhilarating and exhausting. Today, though, he was on a mission. He was. "Last circuit board cost me 3 days' worth of credits," he muttered, scrolling through the salvage auction app on his wrist terminal. The small repair shop he ran barely covered his modest living expenses, and finding affordable parts was a constant challenge. His eyes caught a listing that seemed promising. Lot 203, damaged cargo, mixed components, best offer. The accompanying image was blurry, typical for these low-tier auctions, but Jonah could make out what appeared to be a crate with metallic shapes inside. Perhaps some salvageable navigation equipment or power couplings. At 20 credits, it was worth the gamble. Without much thought, he placed his bid and continued browsing. 15 minutes later, his terminal pinged with confirmation. Lot 203 secured. Delivery scheduled within 2 hours. Jonah smiled. Perhaps his luck was turning. 2 hours later, a delivery drone hovered outside his apartment door, depositing a weathered wooden crate labeled 203 in faded red lettering. The crate was larger than Jonah had anticipated, roughly the size of a small refrigerator. What did I buy this time? He wondered aloud, retrieving his plasma cutter from his tool belt. The crate's seals were sturdy, designed for interstellar transport. As the lid finally gave way with a pneumatic hiss, Jonah leaned forward expectantly. What he saw made his heart stop. Huddled in the corner of the crate, wrapped in what appeared to be dirty rags, was a small, humanoid figure. A child, perhaps, though certainly not human. Pale, almost luminescent skin stretched over a delicate frame. Large, silver eyes stared back at him with unmistakable fear. Thin metallic chains bound the creature's wrists and ankles. "Stars above," Jonah gasped, stumbling backward. You're alive." The being pressed itself further into the corner of the crate, trembling visibly. Those silver eyes never left Jonah's face. With growing horror, Jonah realized what had happened. He hadn't purchased scrap parts. He'd bought a slave. Slavery was technically illegal in most of the Allied systems, but enforcement was spotty at best in frontier stations like Orion 7. Certain species were still trafficked in the shadows of legitimate commerce, particularly those from newly discovered worlds without representation in the Galactic Council. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jonah said softly, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The being flinched, chains clinking softly. Jonah's mind raced. What was he supposed to do now? Return the purchase? Report to station security? The implications of each option weighed heavily on him. "You need water," he said finally, backing away slowly. "Food too, probably. I'll get something." He retreated to his tiny kitchen, hands shaking as he filled a cup with water and gathered some nutrient bars. Universal emergency rations designed to be digestible by most carbon-based life forms. When he returned, the being hadn't moved, still watching him with those unblinking silver eyes. Jonah placed the water and food at the edge of the crate, then backed away several steps. "Here," he said. "For you." He mimicked drinking and eating, hoping the gestures would translate. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then, with cautious movements, the being reached for the cup. The chains restricted movement, but slender fingers managed to grasp the vessel. The being sniffed the water suspiciously before taking a tentative sip, then gulping it down desperately. "You were thirsty," Jonah observed, his heart aching. "How long were you in there?" The being didn't respond, merely watching him as it carefully unwrapped a nutrient bar and nibbled at it. "Do you have a name?" Jonah asked. Knowing communication was likely impossible, but feeling the need to fill the uncomfortable silence. "I'm Jonah Reyes." He tapped his chest as he spoke his name. The being tilted its head slightly, seeming to consider the gesture. "I think I'll call you Lena," Jonah decided. Something about the delicate features and silvery glow of the being's skin reminded him of an old Earth word. Luminescent. Lena seemed fitting. The being, Lena, continued eating silently, though the trembling had subsided somewhat. That night, Jonah barely slept. He left his bedroom door open, checking periodically on the crate in his living area. Lena remained there, seemingly having decided it was safer than venturing out. Jonah had provided blankets and pillows, which after much hesitation, Lena had arranged into a nest-like structure within the crate. By morning, Jonah had made a decision. He couldn't return Lena to the salvage auction. Who knew what would happen to her then? And he couldn't simply open his apartment door and let her wander onto the station. She'd be snatched up by another trafficker within hours. No, he would have to help her, somehow. Over the next few days, a tentative routine developed. Jonah provided food and water, which Lena accepted with increasing trust. He showed her how to use the refresher unit, a basic shower and toilet combination common in station apartments, and found some of his smaller clothes for her to wear. The garments hung loosely on her thin frame, but they were clean and whole, unlike the rags she'd arrived in. Communication remained a challenge. Lena didn't speak, at least not in any language Jonah recognized, but she was observant and intelligent. She watched everything Jonah did with keen interest, and by the fourth day, she had begun to mimic some of his gestures. It was on the fifth day that Jonah approached the issue of the chains. "Those can't be comfortable," he said, pointing to the metal bindings on her wrists and ankles. "May I?" He mimed removing them, careful to demonstrate that she could refuse. Lena studied him for a long moment, then extended her arms cautiously. Using his precision tools, Jonah carefully worked on the locks. They were sophisticated for slave restraints, with biometric encodings that would normally require the master's thumbprint. But Jonah hadn't spent years repairing complex machinery for nothing. Within an hour, the wrist restraints clicked open. Lena rubbed her freed wrists, staring at them as if she couldn't quite believe they were unbound. When she looked up at Jonah, her silver eyes shimmered with what might have been tears. "The ankles next," Jonah suggested, gesturing downward. To his surprise, Lena shook her head vigorously, clutching at the ankle chains. "You want to keep them on?" Jonah asked, confused. Lena nodded, then pointed to the chains and made a quieting gesture with her finger to her lips. "They keep you quiet, hidden?" Jonah guessed, trying to understand. Lena nodded again, more emphatically. Jonah frowned but respected her decision. "Okay, they stay for now." That evening, as they shared a meal of synthetic protein cubes and hydroponic vegetables, Lena made a sound for the first time. It was a low, melodic hum that seemed to vibrate the air around them. "You can speak," Jonah said, surprised. Lena nodded, then pointed to her throat and made a cutting motion. "You weren't allowed to speak before," Jonah interpreted, anger flaring at whoever had silenced her. Lena confirmed with another nod, then tentatively reached out and touched Jonah's hand. Her skin was cool to the touch, with a subtle vibration he hadn't expected. "Jonah," she said suddenly, her voice raspy from disuse, but the pronunciation surprisingly accurate. Jonah broke into a smile. "Yes, Jonah, and you're Lena." "Lena," she repeated, testing the name he'd given her. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a small, uncertain thing, but a smile nonetheless. It was the beginning of their communication. Over the next few weeks, their language barrier gradually diminished. Lena proved to be an incredibly quick learner, absorbing human language at an astonishing rate. Meanwhile, Jonah attempted to learn bits of her native tongue, a complex language full of musical tones and subtle vibrations. From their fragmented conversations, Jonah learned that Lena came from a planet called Ethris, a world of perpetual twilight, circling a dying star. Her people, the Ethrisians, were known for their empathic abilities and connection to energy fields, qualities that made them valuable as slaves in certain specialized industries. Lena had been captured during a raid on her homeworld, sold multiple times, and eventually abandoned by her last owner due to unpaid debts. How she'd ended up classified as damaged cargo in a salvage auction, she didn't fully understand, or didn't wish to explain. As Lena's trust in Jonah grew, so did her confidence. She began helping around the apartment, displaying an uncanny talent for fixing things. Her slender fingers could reach components that Jonah struggled with, and she seemed to intuitively understand energy flows in ways that baffled him. "You have gift," she told him one day, her grammar still imperfect but improving. "Kind heart. Others, not kind." Jonah felt a surge of protectiveness. "I'm sorry for what happened to you, Lena. No one should be treated as property." She tilted her head, considering his words. "On Ethris, we choose bond partners, not forced. Choose with heart." She tapped her chest meaningfully. "That sounds better than how many relationships work even among humans," Jonah admitted with a small smile. Living arrangements evolved naturally. Lena eventually abandoned the crate for a proper sleeping mat in the apartment's small second room, which had previously served as Jonah's storage area. He cleared it out, added some colorful fabrics at Lena's request, and even found a small plant, a luxury on a space station, to make the space more welcoming. But their peaceful coexistence couldn't remain isolated forever. The first indication that their situation had drawn notice came from Jonah's neighbor, a maintenance worker named Trev, who occasionally drank Synthanol with Jonah after shifts. "Heard you've got company these days," Trev mentioned casually, though his eyes were sharp with curiosity. "Silvery little thing. One of those Ethrisians, isn't it?" Jonah froze mid-sip. "Who told you that?" Trev shrugged. "People talk, Jonah. Delivery drone logs are easy to access if you know the right techs. Lot 203 wasn't exactly standard freight, was it?" "It was a mistake," Jonah said firmly. "I thought I was buying scrap parts." Sure, Trev said, raising his hands placatingly. "I'm not judging. Just be careful. Some folks might get the wrong idea, or the right one, depending on your perspective." "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning slavers don't like losing merchandise, even by accident. And there are regulations about harboring undocumented aliens, even on a station as flexible as Orion 7. The warning lingered in Jonah's mind as he returned to his apartment that evening. Lena was waiting, as always, her face lighting up at his arrival. She had prepared a simple meal, her cooking skills improving with practice. "Jonah sad?" she asked, noticing his preoccupation. He considered lying but decided against it. "People know you're here, Lena. That could be dangerous." Her expression darkened. "Old master look for me." "Maybe, I don't know." Jonah ran a hand through his hair. "We should get you documented somehow. Make your presence here legal." "How?" That was the question. Obtaining legal status for Lena would be complicated. As an Ethresian without official entry permits, she existed in a gray area. The simplest solution would be to contact the Ethrisian embassy, but that risked drawing exactly the kind of attention they wanted to avoid. The decision was taken out of their hands 3 days later. Jonah was returning from his workshop when he noticed 3 figures in dark uniforms waiting outside his apartment door. Their posture and the subtle bulge of concealed weapons marked them as private security. Mercenaries, essentially. He slowed his pace, heart hammering. Could he turn around before they spotted him? Too late. The tallest of the 3 looked up, eyes locking onto Jonah. "Jonah Reyes?" The man's voice was flat, professional. "We'd like a word about your recent acquisition." "I don't know what you're talking about," Jonah replied, trying to keep his voice steady. The mercenary smiled thinly. "Lot 203, classified as damaged cargo, But we both know what, or rather who, was inside. My employer would like his property returned. Anger surged through Jonah. She's not property. She's a person. A legal distinction the courts of Orion 7 might debate, the mercenary countered smoothly. But we're not here for philosophical discussions. The Ethresian female belongs to Garrick Thorne. He's offering generous compensation for her return. No questions asked, no penalties imposed. Jonah's mind raced. He'd never heard of Garrick Thorne, but the name alone sounded ominous. She's not here, he lied, praying Lena would remain quiet inside the apartment. The mercenary sighed, as if disappointed. Mr. Reyes, please don't make this difficult. We have authorization to search these premises. You need a warrant for that, Jonah challenged, though he wasn't entirely sure of station regulations regarding mercenary authority. We have something better, the man replied, producing a small, holographic projector. It displayed a series of authorization codes and a seal that Jonah recognized as belonging to Luna Freehold, one of the governing entities of the station. Cooperative Enforcement Agreement. Now, please step aside. Jonah stood his ground. She's been freed. I have the documentation from the Ethresian embassy. It was a desperate bluff. He had no such papers, but the claim might buy him time. The mercenary's confident expression flickered briefly. Present these documents. They're with my legal representative, Jonah improvised. I'd be happy to have them forwarded to your employer. In the meantime, I must insist you leave my property. For a tense moment, Jonah thought the man might force the issue. Instead, he nodded curtly. You have 48 hours to produce these documents, or we'll return with additional authorization. Garrick Thorne doesn't appreciate delays. Mr. Reyes. As the mercenaries departed, Jonah sagged against the wall, adrenaline still coursing through his system. When he finally entered the apartment, he found Lena huddled in the corner of her room, trembling. You heard, he said unnecessarily. She nodded, silver eyes wide with fear. Garrick, she whispered, the name sounding like a curse on her lips. Bad man, hurt many Ethresians. He won't hurt you again, Jonah promised, kneeling beside her. But we need help. Real documentation. Lena hesitated, then reached for Jonah's hand. Embassy, she said softly. But dangerous. Garrick has friends there. We don't have many options, Jonah replied grimly. But I might know someone who can help us navigate the system. That someone was Emma Lee, proprietor of Lee's Electronics, and one of Jonah's few friends on the station. More importantly, Emma had connections throughout Orion 7's Byzantine bureaucracy, thanks to her side business facilitating permits and licenses for merchants. You've stepped in it this time, Jonah, Emma said after he explained the situation. They were in the back room of her shop, speaking in hushed tones, while Lena waited nervously by the door. Garrick Thorne isn't someone you want as an enemy. He has contracts with half the mining operations in the Outer Belt. I didn't choose this fight, Jonah pointed out. But I can't just hand Lena over to a slaver. Emma studied Lena thoughtfully. No, you can't. And technically, by station law, accidentally purchasing a sentient being doesn't create ownership rights. The problem is proving Lena's sentient status to the authorities without exposing her to Thorne's influence. Can you help us? Emma sighed. I know someone at the Ethresian embassy, a cultural attaché named Vri. He's been working to identify and repatriate trafficked Ethresians. If anyone can provide legitimate documentation, it's him. Will he be discreet? As much as possible, Emma hedged. But, Jonah, you need to understand something. The Ethresians have their own customs, their own ways of viewing relationships. If you present yourself as Lena's rescuer, there may be cultural expectations. Jonah frowned. What kind of expectations? Just be prepared for some assumptions about your relationship with her. Their concept of bonds between individuals doesn't always translate neatly to human understanding. Before Jonah could press for clarification, Emma was already sending a message to her embassy contact. Within hours, they had an appointment, not at the embassy itself, which might be watched by Thorne's agents, but at a small cultural center in the station's academic district. Thalvri, the Ethresian cultural attaché, was tall for his species, with the same silvery skin and large eyes as Lena, though his carried the weight of age and experience. He greeted them in a private room filled with artifacts from Ethris, luminescent crystals, woven tapestries depicting celestial patterns, and delicate instruments Jonah couldn't identify. "You have taken a significant risk in coming here," Vri said, after introductions were made. His command of human language was excellent, though the musical cadence of Ethresian speech patterns remained. "Garrick Thorne has allies, even within our embassy." "We didn't have much choice," Jonah explained. "His mercenaries have given us a deadline." Vri nodded gravely, then turned to Lena. He spoke to her in their native language, a flowing series of tones and vibrations that made the air itself seem to shimmer. Lena responded hesitantly at first, then with increasing confidence. After several minutes, Vri addressed Jonah again. She confirms she was taken from the eastern provinces of Ethris during a raid 5 years ago. By our laws, she is a free citizen who was illegally trafficked. I can provide documentation to this effect. Relief washed over Jonah. "That's exactly what we need." "However," Vri continued, "there is a complication. Lena tells me you removed her restraints, provided shelter, sustenance, and protection. Is this correct?" "Yes," Jonah confirmed, uncertain where this was leading. "I couldn't leave her chained up." Vri's expression was unreadable. In Ethresian culture, such actions have significant meaning. When one person releases another from bondage and offers protection, it creates a bond of obligation and choice. "I don't understand." "She has chosen you as her bond partner," Vri explained. "What humans might call a spouse or mate." Jonah blinked in shock. "But we haven't," he stammered, feeling heat rise to his face. "She's just a child." Vri made a sound that might have been laughter. "Lena is young by Ethresian standards, yes, but not a child. Her physical development appears equivalent to your human adolescence, perhaps 14 or 15 years. But more importantly, the bond she recognizes is not necessarily what humans would consider romantic or sexual. It is a connection of spirits, of chosen family." Jonah looked at Lena, who was watching the exchange intently. "Did you know about this?" he asked her. Lena nodded solemnly. "You saved me. I choose you. Bond partner. Husband." She used the human word tentatively, clearly uncertain if it was the right equivalent. "This bond simplifies our legal approach," Vri interjected pragmatically. "As her chosen bond partner, you have standing to represent her interests under Ethresian law. I can provide documentation that recognizes both her free status and your bond, which should satisfy station authorities, even if Thorne challenges it." Jonah felt overwhelmed. In trying to help Lena, he'd apparently become her husband by the standards of her culture. Yet the alternative, rejecting the bond and leaving her vulnerable to Thorne's claims, was unthinkable. "If this helps keep her safe," he said finally, "then I accept." Vri nodded approvingly. "I will prepare the necessary documents. They will be ready by tomorrow. In the meantime, I suggest you both remain here. The cultural center has sanctuary status. Thorne's mercenaries cannot enter without violating diplomatic protocols." That night, Jonah and Lena stayed in a small room provided by the cultural center. As they prepared for sleep on separate mats, Jonah felt the need to address the bond situation. "Lena," he began carefully, "I want you to understand something. On Earth, where humans come from, marriage, Being husband and wife. It's different from your bond partners. It usually involves romantic love, physical attraction. Lena listened attentively. I know human way's different, she said. Vree explained. But bond is bond. You chose to help me. I chose to trust you. Together by choice, not force. She touched her chest. Heart choice. Her simple explanation made a kind of sense. Jonah had to admit, wasn't that the essence of any good relationship? Mutual choice and trust? Heart choice, he repeated, nodding. I can accept that. Lena smiled, the expression transforming her otherworldly features into something beautiful. Sleep now, Jonah. Tomorrow, we fight Garrick. The documents Vree provided the next day were impressive. Holographic seals, embedded biometric verifications, and text in both standard galactic and Ethresian script. They declared Lena a free citizen of Ethris and recognized a formal bond partnership with Jonah Reyes, with all the protections and responsibilities such a relationship entailed under Ethresian law. This should be sufficient, Vree assured them. I've also filed copies with the station registry and notified the Security Council. Thorn can challenge it, but he would need to do so through formal channels, not mercenary intimidation. Armed with the documents, Jonah and Lena returned to their apartment, only to find the door forced open and the interior ransacked. Lot 203, the crate in which Lena had arrived, was smashed to pieces. A message, Jonah surmised grimly. Thorn isn't giving up easily. Lena surveyed the destruction, her expression hardening. We fix, she said determinedly. This home now. They spent the rest of the day restoring order to the apartment. As they worked, Jonah noticed a growing unease in the pit of his stomach. Thorn's response suggested he wasn't going to respect legal documentation. The man clearly wanted Lena back, or wanted to punish her for escaping, and would use whatever means necessary. That night, as they ate a simple meal amid their repaired home, Jonah raised the issue. We might need to leave Orion 7, he suggested. Find somewhere Thorn doesn't have influence. Lena considered this, silver eyes reflecting the apartment's soft lighting. Running always, she said softly. No more running. Stand. Fight. Fighting Thorn is dangerous, Jonah cautioned. He has resources, connections. So do we, Lena countered, her vocabulary and confidence growing daily. Embassy. Emma. Others who hate slavers. She reached across the table, taking Jonah's hand. Together. Stronger. Her touch sent a subtle vibration through Jonah's skin, an Ethresian expression of solidarity. He'd learned. The sensation was oddly comforting. Together, he agreed, though uncertainty lingered. The next challenge came from an unexpected direction. Jonah had been invited to present his latest innovation, an enhanced filter system for ship engines, at the station's annual Tech Expo. It was an opportunity he'd worked toward for months, a chance to attract investors and expand his small repair business. The expo was held in Orion 7's Grand Concourse, a vast open space at the heart of the station, where vendors, engineers, and corporate representatives gathered to showcase cutting-edge technology. Jonah's presentation was scheduled for the second day. Will you come? He asked Lena the night before. It would mean being in public, with crowds. She hesitated only briefly. Yes, support bond partner, important day. The morning of the presentation, Lena, dressed carefully in clothes Emma had helped acquire, garments that accommodated her slender frame, while respecting Ethresian aesthetic preferences for flowing lines and iridescent fabrics. The result was striking. Lena looked not like a former slave, but like a dignified visitor from a distant world. Jonah's presentation was scheduled for mid-afternoon. As they made their way through the crowded concourse, he couldn't help noticing the stares Lena attracted. Some were merely curious. Ethresians were rare on Orion 7, but others held judgment or even hostility. Word had spread about the repair tech with the alien wife, and not everyone approved. "Ignore them," Jonah advised quietly, as they passed a group of merchants, whispering behind their hands. "They don't understand." Lena walked with her head high, though Jonah could sense her discomfort through the slight tremor in her hand when it occasionally brushed his. The presentation itself went remarkably well. Jonah's filter system demonstrated significant improvements in efficiency, and the audience of engineers and investors responded with genuine interest. Questions were technical and respectful, focusing on the innovation rather than Jonah's personal life. As the formal session concluded, and attendees gathered around to examine the prototype more closely, Jonah began to relax. Lena stood to the side, watching with evident pride. That was when the shouting began. "There she is, the slave girl!" The crowd parted as a man pushed his way forward, lean and sharp-featured, with the hard eyes of someone accustomed to taking what he wanted. Though Jonah had never seen him before, instinct told him who this must be. "Felix Marne," Lena whispered, confirming his suspicion. "Garrick's man." Felix pointed accusingly at Lena. "That property was illegally acquired. She belongs to Garrick Thorne." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, people backing away from what was clearly becoming a confrontation. Jonah stepped forward, placing himself between Felix and Lena. "She's a free citizen of Ethris," Jonah stated firmly, raising his voice to be heard by the onlookers. "I have documentation from the embassy confirming her status." Felix sneered. "Paperwork can be forged. That thing is merchandise, stolen from its rightful owner." "She's not a thing," Jonah countered, anger rising. "And she wasn't stolen. She was abandoned as damaged cargo and sold through a legitimate auction." "An administrative error," Felix dismissed with a wave. "One that Thorne wants corrected immediately." His hand moved to his jacket, where the outline of a weapon was now visible. "Step aside, repair boy. This doesn't have to get messy." Security personnel were finally moving toward the disturbance, but they were still too far away. The crowd had formed a tense circle around the confrontation, spectators uncertain whether to intervene or flee. "I'm not letting you take her," Jonah declared, his voice steadier than he felt. Felix's eyes hardened. "Then you'll both come. Thorne can sort out what to do with you later." In one fluid motion, he drew a compact pulse pistol, an illegal weapon on the station, and aimed it directly at Jonah's chest. Several things happened simultaneously. The crowd screamed and scattered. Security officers shouted warnings. Jonah froze, staring down the barrel of the weapon. And Lena moved, with a speed Jonah had never witnessed from her before. She lunged forward, placing herself directly in Felix's line of fire. As the pulse pistol discharged with a sharp crack, Lena's body jerked backward, a bloom of silver-blue blood appearing on her shoulder. "No!" Jonah cried, catching her as she collapsed. The security team swarmed Felix, wrestling him to the ground as he struggled and cursed. Lena's eyes fluttered, her breathing shallow. "Jonah," she whispered. "Safe?" "I'm safe," he confirmed, cradling her against his chest, heedless of the blood staining his presentation clothes. "But you're hurt. Why did you do that?" A faint smile crossed her features. "Bond partners protect. Heart choice." Then her eyes closed, and she went limp in his arms. The next hours passed in a blur of emergency medical protocols and security interrogations. Lena was rushed to the station's medical bay, where a team of doctors, led by a physician named Aaron Voss, who had experience with non-human physiology, worked to stabilize her condition. The pulse penetrated her left shoulder, Dr. Voss explained, when Jonah was finally allowed to see her. "It missed vital organs, but Ethresian physiology is significantly different from human. We're monitoring her closely." Lena lay on a medical bed, silvery skin even paler than usual, various sensors attached to her slender form. A containment field hummed softly around the wound, facilitating healing while preventing infection. "Will she recover?" Jonah asked, voice hoarse from hours of explaining the situation to station security. Dr. Voss nodded cautiously. I believe so. Ethresians have remarkable regenerative capabilities when properly supported. The next 12 hours will be critical, but her vital signs are stabilizing. Jonah sank into a chair beside the bed, exhaustion overwhelming him. The doctor placed a sympathetic hand on his shoulder. She risked her life for you, Voss observed. That's uncommon behavior for someone who was recently enslaved. Usually, the trauma creates deep distrust. We have a bond, Jonah explained simply, too tired to elaborate on the cultural complexities. Voss nodded thoughtfully. I've heard about Ethresian bonds. Fascinating concept. Less about romantic attachment than chosen kinship. In any case, she's lucky to have you. And vice versa, it seems. The doctor departed, leaving Jonah to his vigil. As the station's lighting dimmed to simulate night, he remained at Lena's side, occasionally drifting into restless sleep, only to jerk awake at every change in the medical equipment's sounds. It was during one such moment of wakefulness, deep in the station's artificial night, that Lena's eyes finally opened. Jonah, she murmured, voice weak but clear. Still here. Relief flooded through him. Of course I'm still here. You saved my life. She attempted to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at her injured shoulder. Felix? In custody, Jonah assured her. And not just for the attack. Station security found evidence linking him to multiple trafficking operations. They're investigating Thorne now, too. A small smile touched Lena's lips. Good. No more slaves. That might be optimistic, Jonah cautioned. But it's a start. Over the next few days, as Lena recovered in the medical bay, an unexpected development occurred. The story of the alien girl who took a bullet for her rescuer spread throughout Orion 7, capturing the public imagination. What had been whispers of judgment transformed into expressions of admiration and support. Visitors began arriving at the medical bay, station residents who had heard the story and wanted to offer good wishes or small gifts. Among them was a young orphaned girl named Aiden, who had apparently been following Lena and Jonah's story with fascination. You're so brave, Aiden told Lena, eyes wide with admiration. Nobody ever stood up to Felix Marne before. Lena, sitting up in bed and gaining strength daily, smiled at the child. Not brave, just protect important person. That's what brave is, Aiden insisted. Doing scary things for people you care about. The girl became a regular visitor, bringing drawings and small treasures from the station's public areas. More significantly, she served as a bridge between Lena and the station's children, both human and non-human, creating connections that helped integrate Lena into the community. By the time Lena was released from medical care, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Where once they had faced stares of suspicion, they now encountered nods of recognition and respect. The Tech Expo committee, far from being upset about the disruption, invited Jonah back to complete his presentation, which was received with enthusiasm and resulted in several investment offers. More importantly, the Ethresian embassy, spurred by the publicity surrounding Lena's case, began a more aggressive campaign to identify and recover trafficked Ethresians throughout the sector. Ambassador Thalvri personally visited Jonah and Lena to express gratitude for bringing attention to the issue. Your actions have catalyzed change, Vri told them during the visit. We have already located 3 more of our people being held illegally on neighboring stations. What about Thorne? Jonah asked. Will he face consequences? Vri's expression grew somber. Garrick Thorne has resources and connections that provide significant insulation from justice. However, the evidence gathered from Felix Marne has damaged his operations considerably. He will be more cautious in the future, if nothing else. It wasn't the complete victory Jonah had hoped for, but it was progress. For now, the immediate threat had receded, allowing them to focus on building their life together. and that life was evolving in unexpected ways. Lena's natural talent for engineering, initially observed in Jonah's apartment, blossomed as she recovered. She had an intuitive understanding of energy systems that complemented Jonah's more methodical approach. Together, they refined his filter design, improving its efficiency beyond his original specifications. Their work attracted attention from legitimate businesses on the station. Within months, Reyes and Lena Engineering had established a reputation for innovative solutions to complex technical problems. The small repair shop expanded, hiring 2 assistants and moving to larger premises in a better section of the station. Through it all, their bond deepened. It wasn't the conventional relationship that human society might recognize, but it had its own rhythm and meaning. Lena learned more about human customs, while Jonah studied Ethresian traditions. They created something unique between them, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine affection. 6 months after the incident at the Tech Expo, Ambassador Vri approached them with a proposal. "Our embassy wishes to honor your bond formally," he explained. "A traditional Ethresian ceremony, recognizing what you have built together. It would have significance both personally and diplomatically." The ceremony took place in the embassy's inner sanctum, a chamber designed to mimic the perpetual twilight of Ethris. Luminescent crystals cast a soft glow over proceedings attended by a small group of witnesses: Emma Lee, Dr. Voss, young Aiden, and several Ethresian officials. Jonah wore formal attire provided by the embassy, while Lena was draped in flowing silver fabrics that seemed to capture and amplify the ambient light. Together, they stood within a circle of glowing stones as Vri led them through the ancient ritual. The ceremony culminated with the exchange of bond symbols, not rings, as in human tradition, but intricately woven silver necklaces. As Lena placed the cool metal around Jonah's neck, her fingers lingered at his throat, sending a gentle vibration through the contact, an Ethresian expression of deepest connection. "Bond partners. Husband. Heart choice," she whispered, her command of human language now fluent, but still colored by the musical cadence of her native tongue. "Heart choice," Jonah echoed, feeling the weight of the necklace and all it represented settle against his skin. In the months that followed, their life found a new equilibrium. The repair business thrived, expanding to include custom engineering solutions for vessels throughout the sector. Lena's status as a free Ethresian was never again challenged. Though they remained vigilant, Thorne's influence, while diminished, had not disappeared entirely. Their apartment transformed as well. The wooden crate labeled Lot 203 had been carefully restored and now held a place of honor in their living area, not as a reminder of captivity, but as a symbol of beginnings and transformation. Inside, they kept mementos of their journey: the first tool Lena had repaired, the official embassy documentation, a piece of the prototype that had been interrupted by Felix's attack. Perhaps most significantly, they began working with the Ethresian embassy to establish a program for rescued trafficking victims. Using their modest resources and growing network of allies, they created a halfway house where formerly enslaved individuals could find safety, learn skills, and gradually reintegrate into free society. One evening, as they sat together reviewing plans for the program's expansion, Lena paused, silver eyes reflecting the room's soft lighting. "Think sometimes," she said thoughtfully, "if you not buy Lot 203 that day, where I be now?" Jonah considered the question. "I don't know. Still trapped, maybe. Or sold to someone else." Lena nodded slowly. "Small choices, big changes." "The best mistake I ever made," Jonah acknowledged with a smile. "Not mistake," Lena corrected gently. "Path. Meant to find, whether it was fate, coincidence, or simply good fortune." Jonah couldn't say. But as he looked at the remarkable being who had become his partner in all things, the former slave girl, who now stood as his equal, his colleague, his chosen family. He felt profound gratitude for whatever cosmic accident had brought Lot 203 into his life. Outside their window, Orion 7 continued its eternal orbit, a metallic world of commerce and conflicting interests where trafficking still occurred in shadowy corners. But within their shared space, something new had taken root, a bond chosen by heart, strong enough to withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. And in the restored crate that had once been a prison, hope flourished like a rare flower in the void of space, fragile perhaps, but growing stronger with each passing day.